Well, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Chandra Scott, and I am the Executive Director of Alabama Possible. I am the moderator for this session, and I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning and for this particular breakout titled How Community Benefits Agreements Can Build Career Pathways for Historically Disadvantaged Workers. It's focused on the conference theme of connecting college and career success. Our presenter is Mr. Will Tucker from Jobs to Move America. His bio is published on the platform in this conference. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the session, so please feel free to put any questions you have in the Zoom chat. Before you exit the conference today, I will also place a link in the chat for you to complete a very brief 2-question survey about this particular breakout session. At this moment, I will now turn it over to Mr. Will Tucker.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chandra. Apologies, I think my Zoom screen is doing something a little weird, so I might be hopping on and off camera. And I'm also just slightly under the weather, so I apologize for my lower than normal voice, but we'll get through. I'm really excited to be talking with y'all today. I've got a presentation slideshow that I would love to just dive into, so I'm going to share my screen. Open that up, and if I can start the slideshow. Okay, could I just get one quick confirmation that everybody can see the slideshow? Great, thank you. Love the thumbs up. And I am going to stop my video because I'm not quite sure what's happening there. But yeah, so as Chandra said, I'm Will Tucker. I'm a researcher with Jobs to Move America. I have been a researcher for many years, kind of using these skills that I have in different ways. I used to be an investigative reporter before I came to Jobs to Move America. Now I'm really a strategic campaigner. And so my work is focused on how to increase the quality of jobs that are offered to workers in Alabama from some of these large multinational corporations that come into our state with a high degree of support from the federal government sometimes, and also the state government in the form of incentives. And so really just figuring out how to use the power of both public purchasing and public investment in these companies to increase job quality, increase opportunities for workers, including higher degree attainment and that sort of thing. And so Jobs to Move America, one of our main tools is what's called a community benefits agreement. And I'll go over what these are here just in a minute, but what I want to present on today, obviously, is how we can integrate career pathways for historically disadvantaged workers into community benefits agreements and achieve those and these kinds of partnerships with these large multinational corporations with operations in Alabama and elsewhere. So I want to start by just a little bit of description of what Jobs to Move America is. We're a strategic policy center, and we work to, like I said, use the power of public spending to change corporate behavior. The really key element here is that we have offices in places like California, Illinois, and New York, working on our policy objectives, which includes when large cities like LA make procurements for goods that are produced in Alabama, we can attach good job standards to those procurements, which ultimately raises the quality of jobs over here in Alabama. If customers like LA Metro, for instance, are making huge procurements and demanding that buses, for instance, transit buses, are manufactured with fair labor standards and opportunities for workers and that sort of thing. We do focus on racial and economic justice here in the South in particular. We integrate that into our community organizing. We bring together a number of kind of grassroots-based organizations in Alabama into our community, our Coalition for Community Benefits here. And that's the vehicle that we use to both demand better from the companies that set up shop here and also work in partnership with them in the vehicle being our coalition. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. Yeah, so I just went over a little bit of this. We built that community power here in the South, and we build that policy power over in places like California, New York, and Illinois. Build our grassroots coalition, and community benefits being the kind of objective there. So I'll get to the definition in just a second, but the possibility of a community benefits agreement, we really believe that it can transform communities by building fairer local economies. It provides us an opportunity to hold these companies accountable and demand that they are better corporate neighbors here in the South. So what is a community benefits agreement? Well, it's a private contract between a coalition of community groups like ours and an employer designed to achieve new job standards and equity measures. And it can be enforced through binding arbitration. This is key because it's the teeth of the agreement. If any party to the agreement is not living up to their commitments under the CBA, the other parties can take that to a predetermined arbiter who will basically impose a solution, keep the government or keep the agreement in action. And it's for a term of 5 years, typically. The one that we're going to talk about today is for a term of 5 years. So it has that kind of long horizon that actually allows for change in these communities as our programs get implemented over time. And we, like I said, we really center racial and gender equity in these agreements. So I'll get to the specifics here in just a minute, but I want to talk about the New Flyer campaign. So our coalition for several years was demanding that New Flyer, a manufacturer of electric transit buses with a big factory in Anniston, Alabama, they have about 700 workers there. We were demanding that they sign on to a community benefits agreement. Our rationale was that they receive so much public money that their standards should be higher for all of the public goods that go into that manufacturing operation. And so with our coalition here in Alabama, which included, the Alabama state chapter of the NAACP, Greater Birmingham Ministries and Scott Douglas. It includes representatives from Hometown Action. It represents folks like Alabama Arise, and a number of our kind of other, friends in the field. But also, really importantly, unions. So our union partners are members of these coalitions as well. And we demanded that the New Flyer Community Benefits Agreement include a path for workers to unionize, as that's one of the best and most reliable ways to achieve lasting change for the workers here. And it's a key part of the Good Jobs agenda. So the outcomes, we were in this campaign for several years, asking and demanding that New Flyer sign the agreement. We were talking to New Flyer's customers about the importance of them signing on to this agreement, and carrying out other, working our campaign in other ways as well, with company stakeholders. And eventually, thanks to the solidarity between our labor partners and our community partners, we were able to achieve a really ambitious, enforceable community benefits agreement. And now we're in partnership with New Flyer to implement this agreement. So what did they agree to? Well, these are the specifics about what's in this community benefits agreement that covers that plant with 700 workers over in Anniston. So we have hiring and promotion goals, very ambitious for this area. So 45% of all new hires and 20% of all new promotions must go, must go to historically disadvantaged groups. And in our agreement, So sorry, y'all. In our agreement, that includes people of color, LGBTQ, Alabamians, workers, women, and systems impacted people. And that's very key to include because those are folks who have not only been to prison, but have been arrested, have an arrest record, have been through a diversion program, or have been through some other form of systems involvement, criminal justice systems involvement. We got New Flyer to agree to implement a pre-apprenticeship program, which is key to the kind of topics we'll be discussing today. We're designing the curriculum for this pre-apprenticeship program. New Flyer is going to allow us access to the plant to implement this. And also we're going to be able to enroll workers through an application process and get them into the pre-apprenticeship program, which hopefully eventually will be state certified in Alabama, and giving those workers a short-term certificate that they can carry with them for the rest of their career. More technical training up to and including an apprenticeship program, an electrical apprenticeship program, which fits New Flyer's needs. And we're able to really help them set this up. You know, this is kind of one thing that they're getting out of the partnership is more skilled workers, better training programs that we're helping them implement. A higher education initiative. So New Flyer will be advocating for adding electric vehicle manufacturing to the Alabama State Department of Education's Transportation and Logistics Career Cluster in the CTE curriculum. This is mostly because Alabama doesn't currently have a community college curriculum designed especially for electric vehicle manufacturing. And that's in demand, not just at New Flyer, but also at Mercedes, at Honda, Hyundai, and the other manufacturers here in the state. And New Flyer is going to work with us to advocate for that at the state level. We're also partnering with Gadsden State to think through what that program would look like and how it would benefit students, not just for the workers at New Flyer. This would be something that would benefit the community more broadly. So the idea here is really to provide a pathway for any student, any high school student, or someone who has not even completed high school, a pathway, a reliable pathway that they can choose to follow that will result in them getting employed at New Flyer. And that pathway might include the pre-apprenticeship program for some workers. It might include going through this EV manufacturing technology program at Gadsden State or another community college. It just depends on what's best for the worker, but the pathway is there. And then finally, we've got a complaint system to address charges of racial discrimination and sexual harassment. This gives any worker who files those kinds of complaints through the company's internal system an independent advocate. They're actually going to be our independent advocate for those workers is actually the Alabama State chapter of the NAACP. And JMA contracts with them to provide this service to the worker filing a complaint through the internal process at New Flyer, just to put independent eyes on the process, add accountability, and also give some guidance to the workers who are filing such complaints. A few other things, safety trainings twice a year, increase in veterans employment as well, and Spanish bilingual capacity. All of this is included in our community benefits agreement. We also, really importantly, have two kind of service-oriented programs. One is a semi-annual debt clinic. We noticed that a lot of the workers at New Flyer are subject to wage garnishments, and we wanted to help them directly to relieve that pressure on them. And so they can meet with us twice a year at a debt clinic to get connected with Legal Services of Alabama, to get connected with other attorneys that can help them get out from under that wage garnishment, file a challenge to the wage garnishment against their creditors, and kind of build their power that way. The ban the box provision is really important, and just going back to including systems impacted folks, criminal justice systems impacted folks in our historically disadvantaged groups. This is really key to meeting those ambitious hiring goals with that group. We've actually achieved in Alabama what Minnesota achieved statewide. So a ban the box provision in Minnesota, for instance, prevents companies from asking about workers' criminal histories before a conditional offer of employment is made. And we're really excited about this because this is not something that we would be able to institute in Alabama at a policy level, given the current political climate, but we're able to implement it through this community benefits agreement. This is a private agreement. There's no issue of preemption here. This is an agreement between a company and a series of community groups, and we're achieving the policy objective that Minnesota is achieving with a statewide law. So this is really exciting, and it also opens up the door for workers to apply. A lot of research shows that if your system's impacted, you may self-select out of good job opportunities, thinking that you're not going to get past the interview. You're not going to get to an interview because they're going to do a background check on you. And we're seeing this right now as we recommend workers to New Flyer who have systems impacted status. We're seeing them make it past that initial stage, discussing their criminal histories, if there is one, their alleged criminal histories with the company, and then moving into employment. So it is actually working to give these folks more opportunity in the company. And so putting it all together, here's the pathway. We have those ambitious hiring goals, the 45% of all new hires being from historically disadvantaged groups, working together with Ban the Box, our provision to prevent the company from doing background checks before a conditional offer of employment that mitigates that self-selection bias. Working all together to get folks in the door at New Flyer, where then they'll have an opportunity to join up with the pre-apprenticeship program, which I should say, there are some more specifics to this program that we can share now. This is going to be about 40 hours of instruction. We're partnering with Gadsden State University to provide tool certification and job readiness training. But we're also bringing our own expertise to the table. We have internal capacity at JMA to do safety trainings like OSHA 10, and we're adding that as a part of our pre-apprenticeship program as well. There's also going to be a couple other additional classes, I believe, on situating workers kind of in a manufacturing environment. What are you getting into? What's going to set you up for success? And that sort of thing. And then eventually the pre-apprenticeship program, I forgot to mention this actually, the key element of the pre-apprenticeship program is that it gives preferential access to the folks who complete it into the apprenticeship program that New Flyer is going to be implementing. That electrical apprenticeship that I mentioned earlier, candidates for that apprenticeship who have completed the pre-apprenticeship program will be able to enter on a preferential basis. And then, as I mentioned, we've got support systems during all of this to help these folks, especially the historically disadvantaged workers, be able to stay in the environment, be able to succeed. We're trying to set them up for success. We've got our alternative complaint system, our debt clinic, the safety trainings, and bilingual materials. So, that's a little bit about the community benefits agreement that we have. I would love to take a couple questions at this moment, and then maybe dive into our exercise here before too long.
If there are any questions, Mr. Tucker, since we have a small group, you can feel free to come off mute or put your question in the chat.
Well, I have a question about the pre-apprenticeship program with Gadsden State. Now, do they complete an associate's degree with that, or that's part of the certificate, short-term certificate you mentioned?
Yeah, it won't be an associate's degree. What we're doing is Gadsden State offers training business and industry. Basically, it's a kind of a la carte program where we can go into their catalog and choose what is going to be most beneficial for these workers. And that's what we get to design at JMA in partnership with our community groups. And so in all of that consultation, we've gone over to Gadsden State. We learned recently, for instance, that several of their tools-based classes, their hands-on learning, actually offer more certifications, more tool certifications than we expected. So we're going to be able to offer these participants industry recognized certification in 3 different tool sets through this program. And then the certificate, the actual transferable certificate that it can really help a worker throughout their career with this, is going to come from the fact that we're seeking state certification from the Alabama Office of Apprenticeships for this program. And so when we're able to offer that certificate at the end of that being a state certified program, these will be workers who are, even though they don't have the direct access into the electrical apprenticeship at New Flyer, that certificate, having a certified pre-apprenticeship program completion certificate would help them in getting into other apprenticeships in work-based learning. So yeah, to answer your question directly, we're kind of doing an a la carte model with Gadsden State, picking those courses that are also going to fit what we need to achieve certification from the Alabama Office of Apprenticeships. So they obviously have certain criteria that we have to meet as a program in terms of instruction that we're providing thanks to Gadsden State. Did that answer your question?
It did. And I actually have another question for you.
Sure.
How does Jobs to Move America decide who they're going to partner with? Does it have to be like a company of a certain size or a community with certain demographics? How does that work?
Sure. Well, there are a couple of factors. So in choosing a company, like I said, our philosophy is that we should demand more of companies that receive more public funding. So we focus on companies in the public procurement supply chain, but also companies that receive, right now, it's very in vogue, the electric vehicle battery industry, and they're receiving a lot of federal funding, even in Alabama, to build up factories here, and basically $200 million from the federal government. Just when a company receives something like that, we should demand more. We should demand that they are nothing less than a excellent corporate neighbor in the areas that they're going into. And so that's the criteria that we use to determine, which companies we seek to partner with. In terms of community groups, we really just want to have a true connection to grassroots communities. And we do a lot of thinking about who is not in the room that needs to be here. And then we do a lot of solidarity building, like I said, between the labor groups and the community focused groups. And I guess just to expand on that for a second, I don't think that very often people view labor unions as grassroots groups, but they really should. I mean, that is a really direct connection to grassroots groups, especially when we're able to involve locals in our actions and our organizing. And it's a great way to remain connected to the workers in Alabama. That's not to say that community groups can't and don't do that, of course, but I just think that unions are overlooked a lot by community groups in trying to reach the grassroots. And so that's partially the bridge that we're trying to build there between all of these groups. On the community group side, we really just want to make sure that we are partnering with groups that forefront racial justice, economic justice, who kind of agree with us with our we basically adopt the good jobs philosophy. You can see this kind of language coming out of the Department of Labor right now, like what actually makes a good job. We've got a lot of jobs in Alabama. Our unemployment rate is very low, but what constitutes a good job? And that's been kind of an issue that is being defined by the Biden administration right now. And it's getting pretty close to how we as an organization and our partner organizations view good jobs as well. So I think that would just be, the criteria there. We would be willing to partner with anybody, but it has to have kind of a racial justice and economic justice and good jobs analysis behind their work. Does that make sense? Great. Thank you for the questions. I appreciate that. Chandra, could I get a time check, please? With that, do we have?
Yeah, so now you have about 20 minutes before the end of your session.
Great. Okay. Well, in that case, I kind of would like to go into this exercise, and I thought we might try to put together a community benefits agreement in considering a hypothetical employer. And I put some profile information, it's all hypothetical, but I tried to pick a place that many of us might be familiar with. So we're familiar with the community, identified some issues that workers might be having there that might come up in a campaign. And those are based on just kind of things that I've seen throughout Alabama, but nowhere in particular. And I do, since this is a conference focused on college attainment, I do want to think through and learn from your expertise too in the room about what more could we add to a community benefits agreement on the college attainment front. So if we had a company that we're working in close partnership with, what should we be demanding of them so that we can further build out these career pathways? So I do want to think that through. So first, I'll go through these questions here. These are the questions to consider as we move forward. So what do the surrounding communities in the state provide to corporations for setting up shop in a given location? And so this kind of gets into the idea of, why are we doing this? Why are we demanding more of this company? What in return do they really owe their surrounding communities? Which CBA proposals can build pathways for good jobs, but also consensus among our community partners? How do we make sure that we're really having a community designed career pathway that meets everybody's needs and gets consensus? That's in the negotiation of these community benefits agreements. It's really key for the community groups to always be in consensus. And then how can CBAs be used to achieve the goal of providing thousands of additional workers with valuable post-secondary credentials? So again, how could we further work with the community college system? How could we work with even our large state public universities to integrate them into community benefits agreements? So is everybody comfortable moving forward and kind of having this be a discussion? And I think I'll exit full screen and see if I can see everybody's face. Looks like I'm gonna have to keep sharing my screen, but that's okay. So yeah, here is our hypothetical company. We're in the fiberglass component parts industry. I just put the name, ACAN Inc. It's based in Tuscaloosa, has 500 employees. It's received $15 million in state and local tax credits, rebates. And the issues, and I'll extrapolate on this based on what I've seen, again, nowhere in particular, but things that we might address here. Let's say that safety is a main concern, especially chemical exposure and the release of those chemicals into the Black Warrior River, let's say. But particularly when I say racial disparity in chemical exposure, let's say that we're finding that Black workers at this plant are being given the more dangerous jobs in closer proximity to dangerous chemicals. We see high position turnover, and that may be something that we can impact through, say, a pre-apprenticeship program or something like that, that would give workers put the horizon for them leaving further down the line. It might also include, should also include, in my opinion, organizing labor agreement, because we know from research that unions tend to increase longevity of workers staying at the companies. And let's say that the company has difficulty recruiting skilled workers. So with that, I'd like to open up a different page. And share my screen again. Okay, so that you can see these two parts. So I thought that first of all, we would choose coalition partners. This could be folks in the room. That would be kind of it could be the folks in the room. But going through that process that we go through as a coalition, who's not in the room? Who do we need to be in the room so that we have representation from all these key groups, in the Tuscaloosa community in this case. So yeah, would like to open it up for discussion. Yeah, so if we're negotiating a community benefits agreement with Alabama, with ACAN Inc., where do we start? Who do we need in the room?
So Shelton State, I think, is the local closest community college, so maybe partnering with them to offer some skills-based training or certification.
Excellent. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit. Are there others? So I have a couple suggestions, but I'd love to hear if anybody else does.
Feel free to just come off mute with your answers.
Are you just looking, maybe, I was thinking possibly high schools and not just the community colleges and universities. If you're wanting to get kids to career pathways instead of a college situation, or maybe something that the high schools partner with community colleges and a business possibly.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And as a matter of fact, that brings up a good point. As part of our agreement with New Flyer, once we have those that EV manufacturing technology program in place, we should be able to negotiate articulation agreements between high schools and the community colleges and New Flyer to really solidify that. So I think that's a great idea. So we'll put local, I'll put in local high schools. Is anybody else familiar with any other Tuscaloosa-based organizations, kind of grassroots types organizations? And I think I would include possibly Birmingham in this as well. So my suggestion would be Black Warrior Riverkeeper. So I think it's important to keep in mind that even though every individual organization is going to have their wheelhouse, we do also have to be inclusive of other organizations as well. So in this hypothetical company, with an issue with toxic chemical release, the Riverkeeper would be a natural partner.
Will Leslie added in the chat Stillman College.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Okay, so and we can move right along into what our proposals might look like. So in this section, I imagined, if these are our coalition partners, what are they bringing to the table that we can leverage in community benefits agreement negotiations? What are their wheelhouses that they can offer? We did just mention articulation agreements, so I might put that one down at first. Okay. Anything else? Is there any other thing that we might have discussed in the New Flyer agreement that you'd like to put into this one, or seems like it would fit?
Maybe with those hiring practices, having those percentages reflect what the community reflects.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a little bit what I was trying to get at with the hypothetical example. So we can see that there is an issue possibly with racial discrimination in promotions at this company, and we can address that through a community benefits agreement. So yeah, I'll put in hiring and to redress okay, yeah, that was a great answer. I think that's a key part of any community benefits agreement. Anything else? I would say mandated safety trainings. That's another thing that we can seek through a community benefits agreement to address safety issues with toxic chemicals. So I'll put that one down. And then I'll leave the last one for someone else. Is there anything else from your organizations? Anything like I'm curious to know, what your top policy priorities are. One of our key achievements in here is getting a state, what was designed as a state level policy through legislation in Minnesota, implemented for just this one company, yes, but in Alabama that banned the box proposal. So I'd be curious to know if there's something that would fit in this context, something that might not be achievable necessarily here in the state through the legislature, but could be achievable in this context. And if nothing, that's okay too. We can wrap up there. I would say that I also always say that I think an organizing agreement would be a key part of these. So we'll call that our last one. An organizing agreement to give workers a path to union recognition if they choose. So great. Well, thank you all for that. I hope that was helpful. I think that would be a strong community benefits agreement if we had it in Alabama. So yeah, are there any questions, any kind of discussion points? Chandra, do you have anything that you'd like to facilitate?
Well, first, I want to say, Will, thank you so much for leading this discussion and this exercise for our participants here to really understand how community benefit agreements work and all the elements that are part of it. Before you all leave, first, I want to say thank you again, Will, for giving your time as well, even though you're under the weather. So thank you for being a true trooper and pushing through this presentation. Before everyone exits, I would ask that you would, in the chat, I just put a link to a very brief survey. So if you can complete that survey for me before you exit, and then you have a few moments before the next start sessions, which should start at 10:30. So you can go back to the lobby and you will go to the next session of your choice. Again, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you all.